Yeah, the story of how I came upon the script of the King's Speech and discours devant was one of the more extraordinary stories of how to find a script. So I'm half Australian, half English. My mother's Australian, my father's English. And a few years ago, my mother was invited by some Australian friends of hers in London to come to a play reading of an unproduced play, a play that had been performed. And it was just a few actors around tables like this reading this play called The King's Speech. And my parents were only invited because they were desperate to have an Australian in the audience because there was an Australian theme. They'd never been invited to a play reading in their lives before.
La manière dont je suis arrivée à voir le scénario du discours d'Arway est assez extraordinaire parce que je viens ma mère est australienne, mon père est anglais et ma mère et mes parents ont été invités à la lecture d'une pièce que j'avais jamais vue. Et la raison pour laquelle mes parents et ma mère en fait, ont été invités, c'est parce qu'ils voulaient absolument en fait, avoir une australienne dans le public.
And this play, The King's Speech, was going nowhere. Not only was it not a film as a play, they couldn't find anyone to put it on, they couldn't find any interest. So this play was in about as bad a place as they can be.
Et en fait, la pièce, le discours d'Arway, est dans une position qui est extrêmement difficile parce que personne ne voulait, que ce soit pour un film ou pour une pièce, il n'y avait pas de structure qui pouvait vraiment aller.
So after the director of the play, Mother called me up and said, "Oh, hi Tom, I think I found your next film." And I said, yeah, sure. I'm, thinking, of course, that this couldn't possibly be true. So I said, send it to me, I'll look at it. And weeks, if not months, went past, and I was in America making a television miniseries for HBO called John Adams, which is the story of the American Revolution. It was 9 hours long. I was directing all of it, so I was busy. But anyway, about every month, my mum would call and go, "Have you read that script yet?" And I go, "No, I will." After 6 months, I finally read the script and called her up and said, "I'm very sorry, you're absolutely right, this is my next film." It may be grey and rainy and cold and depressing in this country, but where I come from, right now it's summer and it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, and the sun is out, it's blue skies, and I grew up with this sense that for every state there was its opposite, and I grew up through my parents with a sense that I could be both an insider and an outsider in my own culture. Through my mother's eyes as a child, I learned a critical sense of Britishness, and I learned kind of hostility to Britishness. And as an Australian, I think she suffered casual prejudice about being Australian growing up. And then through my father, and I suppose through being growing up in London, I was an insider. And I feel, looking back at it, that ability to be an insider and an outsider and switch between them continuously is kind of central to directing, because as a director you need to be able to disappear inside the story and then a moment later stand out and be the toughest judge. You need to give yourself emotionally to watching an actor and then a moment later be critical of what that actor's doing, and so it's that ability to kind of see to stand outside and inside emotionally is very central to directing.
But how did you get initially interested in filmmaking?
La première réalisation, vous l'avez fait très jeune, vous avez 12 ans, et comment vous êtes arrivé à cette première réalisation?
Like a lot of directors, I was originally a failed actor.
Réalisateur, en fait, je suis un comédien à la
This realization came to me when I was 10 or 11 years old, where I was consistently not given a starring role in a school play.
Je me suis rendu compte très tôt, vers 10 ou 11 ans, parce que je n'avais pas les rôles principaux dans les pièces d'école.
And I was obviously a weirdly strategic 10-year-old, because I remember thinking, okay, if I can't get the lead roles in school with 300 people, what's the chance that I will be good enough in my entire year to be an actor? I should give up this dream now.
C'est très stratège à 10 ans, parce que je me suis dit, si je ne peux pas avoir le rôle principal dans une école de 300 personnes, comment est-ce que je vais pouvoir bosser là-dedans? Donc il va falloir trouver d'autres chemins.
And I mean, it's a good decision, but I really am terrible.
Et en fait, c'est une bonne solution, parce que vraiment, je ne suis pas un bon comédien.
I mean, it's one good thing with actors is I can never show them how I want to do it. I always have to talk about psychology or some other motivation because I show them the result.
Et c'est bien parce que je peux jamais montrer aux comédiens comment faire parce que je préfère, je parle de psychologie ou je trouve d'autres moyens parce que si je leur montrais ce que je fais,
But no, so I fell in love. I had a brilliant, like a lot of people, it all started with a brilliant teacher at school. I had a brilliant teacher called Roger Mortimer who put on these plays in my school and taught us English and drama. And I fell in love with this world of acting and theatre and drama. And I knew I'd kind of found my life. And then it was strange. I was walking through the school hall and there was a book lying on a piano in the assembly hall, and I picked it up and it was a book about a library book about how to make films and television. And I basically stole it, put it in my bag, took it home, read it cover to cover, and that night I was like, no, what I really want to do is do a film. I remember, I don't know if any of you seen the film by Spike Jones called Adaptation. It's a good film, but in it there's a line where one of the characters says, we fall in love in order to simplify the world to ourselves. And in some sense that's what happened, because the moment I fell in love, the world became a lot more specific, because I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And then I spent a year reading every book I could get my hands on. The best one was the BBC training and reading directors. And then I remember I had a big book about movie directors, and I read all about directors like Stanley Kubrick and Coppola, and I came across Spielberg, and it said that, and it talked about that Steven started making films when he was 11, and I remember thinking, being very worried that Steven Spielberg had started at 11 and here I was at 12 and I hadn't started.
Donc j'ai passé un an après ça donc à lire tous les livres sur lesquels.
And it was funny, a year and a half ago there's a guild of directors called the Directors Guild of America, and Stephen and I were both nominated that year. I was nominated for Les Misérables and he was nominated for Lincoln, and we all had to make these speeches when we were, to accept our nomination in front of the audience, and Stephen was sort of sitting right there, and I was talking about the role that directors have in encouraging each other, and I made this speech saying that I was only here because I became incredibly competitive about you, Stephen, as well, because you started films a year younger than me, which is slightly embarrassing to me.
L'année dernière, on était à une cérémonie de prix.
Films, I don't want to be a person who just talks about making films. I was going to get a Super 8 camera, and I discovered my uncle had an old clockwork 16mm camera from the 1960s in his attic. And I borrowed that, and I made my first film with this old clockwork film camera. What's extraordinary is I was a silent filmmaker for the first 4 years of my life, and I would make films with 100 feet of film, and I would run the camera at 16 frames a second, which gave me about 4 minutes. And then I would make films, my shooting ratio, which is the amount of film you shoot to the amount of film that ends up in the film, is about 1.5 to 1, and I would make films that ran about 2.5 minutes long, from 4 minutes of material. Which when I look at my shooting ratio now is a little different. So my first film I made when I was 13, and it was called Runaway Dog, and it was a comedy about a dog that keeps running away. But what I find extraordinary is that, the iPhone in my pocket has sync sound, shoots at 2K, there's no cost in shooting, and it seemed like only a moment ago that it was so expensive to make films that all I could do was have 4 minutes of film. And so my whole relationship with film started with this idea of, the painting with light cost money, and everything was in relationship to money, back of money, because I could afford, for £25 I could get my 100 feet, and that's all I could afford. And it's the democratization of the medium with digital is so profound, even in my lifetime. But one good thing about the training is that from the age of 12 onwards, I was trying to persuade people to give me things for nothing. So I would go to Soho, and I would walk down Wall Street, and I would go into equipment shops and say, you have to give me this film for nothing, you have to give me this change bag for nothing, you have to give me, and I became a hustler at 12, 13 years old. I was always hustling for money, for equipment, for free things. And actually that's not a bad training, because that is effectively a director's life, because you always remain a hustler, trying to get other people to give you, increasingly large sums of money.
You finished school, which seems like an early age, I read that. Is that true?
Vous avez arrêté l'école à 16 ans?
Okay. But at 16 you did direct another film.
Yeah, so I made these sort of short silent films, and then I wanted to make a proper short film to professional standards for professional actors, and I wrote the script when I was 16. I spent 2 years raising the money and getting the equipment, nothing, and I made it when I was 18, and that was a film called Painted Faces, which kind of became my calling card, because it was bought by Channel 4 Television, and it had a cinema release, a Blue House film, Danish, went to the London Film Festival, so I wrote, directed, produced, edited it, so it's important to say that at a festival of short films that my calling card was absolutely my short film Painted Faces, and before that it was the silent short films that I made that persuaded people to give me money to make the more professional short film. So I made this short film, and there was an immediate pressure on me to then write and direct my first feature film. I went to Oxford, where I directed theatre, and I came out at 21, and it was, I went through quite a hard period of realising that I didn't, at 21, have a feature film in me. I probably had some bad but not anything that was shooting. And what was interesting is that if at 21 I could have written a script good enough and good finance, then I might have been able to make a film extremely young. But I didn't. I realised that I wasn't ready at that point. And when you're then saying, okay, I'd like to direct someone else's script, you're in a queue with a lot of much more established, experienced, successful directors, and so you have to kind of think, well, how am I going to get there? And I chose to arrive at making my first film by directing TV commercials and television drama, because I wasn't sure which one would lead me back to movie making quickest, but I thought I would do both. In fact, I even did corporate films and videos as well, so I literally did any type of directing. And again, that was quite, it's interesting, because I remember the first time I was offered money to direct something, actually someone paying me to direct rather than me paying money I didn't have, or borrowing money I didn't have to make a film, which is the usual short film process, ruining yourself. I remember I was offered £200 to direct a Christmas video for an advertising agency. I went home to my parents and I said, this is outrageous, I'm an auteur, I'm not going to direct a Christmas video for an advertising agency. I just find this so disgusting, and my father said, it's £200, take the money and do the job. He was right. And interesting, and ironically, within a year and a half, I was directing my first actual television commercials for the same agency, starring the popular Right Said Fred. So it was right that I did it, because it led to much more interesting work very quickly. But I always had the philosophy I would do no other. I would only direct. I wouldn't take any other role, and even if it was a very modest type of directing, I would do it. And the same, I suppose, modesty applied to television, where the first job as a director I was offered in television was directing the second unit of a children's soap opera. And again, I went through the kind of, I'm an auteur, I wrote a children's drama, this is, and the second unit, and this is a soap opera, and again, I have a lovely, grounded family, so I need to get over myself and maybe open the fact that I'm asking to learn from taking on this form of directing. And the truth is, what I learned is that even directing, I directed Byford Grove and EastEnders, which you might have heard of, is a very well-run soap opera. I realised it was all filmmaking, and I could bring my values to apply to to it, and actually there was a huge amount to learn. And the thing I learned most of all was how to work fast, because when you do EastEnders you have to do 16 minutes of finished, edited drama in a 10-hour day, every day. And that is the hardest thing I've ever done as a director. I mean, there's nothing that comes close to being as hard as that. And so in a funny way, you know, given you never have enough time as a director anyway, it's this incredible, for me it was this incredible apprenticeship of learning how to work at incredible speed, and it's meant that for the rest of my life, whenever I'm in trouble on a schedule, I know how to get out of it, I know how to be very quick on my feet.
And eventually you also met very prestigious actors, thinking of Helen Mirren. How did that change the way you work?
Comment est-ce qu'après travailler, rencontrer des comédiennes comme Hélène Mirren qui sont celles qu'est-ce que ça vous a?
Yeah, so directing you know, television commercials, soap operas, they're actually quite fast to doing television. Sorry, at a more, you know, at a bigger budget level. I did a couple of period adaptations for the BBC, with the great Anne Bates on Cold Climate, and then Helen Mirren on Prime Suspect and Elizabeth First, recently series out for Elizabeth First. And I think it's a good question, because working with an actor of Helen Mirren's level really had a big effect on me, because I before that point I'd always been quite controlling about the way I would do my mise en scène. You know, I'd have my plan, and I'd have to work out in my head, and I kind of wanted the actors to do exactly what I mapped out in my head. Then he worked with Helen Mirren, and I remember like on the first day of Prime Suspect, I laid this long track with the camera, and she came in and I said, you're going to start here, we're going to walk over there, and the camera's going to follow you, and she looked at me and said, yeah, but why am I walking? I said, yes, I've got the correct shot, but why am I walking? But the camera's going to just, but why am I walking? and I realised that I had to actually listen to what an actor had to say. Helen Mirren being, you know, incredibly clever, she had an amazing grasp of mise en scène herself, her character. And I started to work in a new way, where even though I might have planned in my head, I would arrive on set every day, every scene, and having a period with the actors where I freed my brain of any of my preconceived notions, and really brought out of the actors all the thinking they'd done, and then would arrive at a marriage between what I've been thinking, what they've been thinking, and if you have actors who are good enough, that can be, you know, an incredibly revolutionary process in my work.
Travailler avec la télévision, j'ai très vite évolué vers des projets qui sont plus importants, comme Prime Suspects.
In France, there's a lot of pressure on the first films. And how did that go for you?
Yes, so finally, I think I was 29, 30 when I finally got my first film, so this process of what I thought was a sidetrack for television and commercials actually was quite fast. And it was a film I fell in love with, which was about truth and reconciliation in South Africa, which was this extraordinary process whereby South Africa had avoided a civil war when power was handed over to the democratic process and the black majority. And it was a process where people who committed crimes, so sort of white policemen who committed crimes against black people in detention, could get amnesty or freedom if they told the truth. So in other words, it was the opposite of our criminal justice system. In this system, the more you told the truth about the crimes, the more likely you were to go free. Because the encouragement, because you got freedom or amnesty for Truth Day, it meant that there was this great opening up of the dark secrets of South Africa's past. Film star Chiwetel Ejiofor, who you might have seen in the film 12 Years a Slave last year, and also Hilary Swank, who just won the Oscar for Boys Don't Cry. pressure when it's your first film, and I think that in some ways I had a tough time when it was shooting in South Africa. It was very difficult because it's it was a very busy time of year when I was shooting, so I didn't necessarily get all the best side of the crew on my film. But I think that the thing that was definitely hard is when it came to the cinema release. It got a limited cinema release, but in some countries it ended up as a television film on television. It didn't necessarily achieve a cinema release. And at the time I found that hard, and I think what I was slightly sad about looking back on it is that I was motivated entirely by kind of my moral sense. Like I really felt that this story was morally important to get out into the world. I wanted this type of conflict resolution more talked about. And yet what I discovered is that in today's cinema world, if the audience feel that they're being told something that's good for them, they tend to be very scared of going to cinema. And if you have a message you want to say, sadly, you have to probably disguise it in something that appears to be very entertaining, because if it is openly moral, I think that the cinema audience is sadly quite scared. In motion, I was very drawn to a theme of forgiveness in the film, because the centre of the movie is Chiwetel's character having to forgive the white policeman who tortured him very severely, or to see whether he could forgive him. And that film of forgiveness is something that I keep going back to. I made a film called Longford for HBO with Jim Broadbent and Samantha Morgan, which also looked at theme of forgiveness. In a way, the King's Speech is about forgiveness. It was can Bertie forgive his past, or forgive his parents, or forgive his brother, or forgive the situation. And then also in his apartment is the forgiveness of Valjean, Valjean's forgiveness of Javert is utterly central. And I still haven't understood why I keep getting drawn to the forgiveness scene. But that was certainly the first time I started really exploring. I talked about the fact that as a 21-year-old, not sitting in my bedroom failing to write my great script, and how I suffered for that. But what's interesting is embracing the idea of directing other people's material. The joy of it is you keep getting taken into worlds that you couldn't possibly know well enough yourself to have written scripts. I mean, there's no way I could have written a story about South Africa, but I was given the incredible privilege of for a year going into that world, meeting Nelson Mandela, meeting Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and learning how to tell a story about that situation. So for me, the incredible privilege of not writing some of my scripts is I get taken on these odysseys and these journeys into these other worlds, which keeps challenging, broadening my brain, my experience. Talking earlier about particularly in the French system, the pressure on you to be an auteur director, to be a vice director. And I think the other thing that's interesting about it is how often I've only discovered that films are very personal to me, either halfway through making them, or after finishing them, or 5 years after making them. And in some ways, this idea that you can always know yourself well enough to write a script about yourself doesn't. Sometimes you take on a story that seems outside yourself, and then through working on it, you discover how it's person. So, if there are any filmmakers out there in the world, in the audience who are having anxiety about this, I'm here to say that the other way of working is also very enriching, and you do end up rewriting scripts.
And on the more technical side, I saw that your DOP for this film, Larry Smith, you've already worked with him for the first. Are you faithful with your artistic collaborators? You mentioned Dupla earlier on.
Am I faithful? From time to time. I go through quite long phases of royalty. The first director project I worked with Larry Smith, who was Stanley Kubrick's director of photography on Eyes Wide Shut, and has worked with Kubrick since The Shining and Full Metal Jacket. And then actually that had a huge influence on me, because through Larry Smith I learned a lot about the way Stanley Kubrick liked to work, and particularly Stanley's love there with the 18mm lens, which puts characters always in strong relationships to environments. So if you shoot a mid shot or a medium close shot on 18mm lens, you're keeping the character in an intense relationship to their space. And I remember this ended up being very influential on the King's Speech, where as I was preparing, I kept thinking, this is a film that's almost entirely close-up, because the centre of the film are these conversations between these two men, and how does this not look like a piece of television cutting close-ups? And I began to think about whether there was a way of using slightly wider lenses, 18, 21, 27, 32 maybe, to shoot the close-ups so that the characters remained in an intense relationship to their space. And then when I found that, consulting with the wonderful kind of distressed wall, I felt like I found a space that informed the characterization. And I think the reason I do that, as I thought about it a lot, is that there's a strange process in filmmaking for me, where on the one hand it's very controlled. I mean, you have your vision in your head, you dreamt this film, you want to precisely execute this vision of the film. And then there's the second thing, that the moment you start in the cutting room, the film has become something slightly different from what you imagined. And at that point, you've got to start serving this new thing that the film has become. You've got to recognise that it's something new, and you've got to start serving it. And for that, you may need to have access to different choices that you couldn't possibly have guessed at the time you were doing it, because at the time you were doing it, you didn't quite see the new thing that the film had become. So doing coverage in a way is out of some kind of humility of knowing that you can't know all the questions you're going to be answering in the edit in advance, and so it's better to shoot your vision very precisely, but also give yourself some options to explore something new if it comes on you later. So it's both a combination of being very controlling and also understanding that you cannot possibly know everything at the time of shooting.
Je voulais parler en fait des prises de sécurité ou de fait.
Going back to your collaborators, my editor I work with is called Melanie Oliver, and over the years I've discovered that Melanie is a much better editor than I would be if I was a film editor. And so the other thing is, if you're shooting to cut it in your head, what if the person cutting it is better than the person cutting it in your head? Then you start needing, well, I better not be too prescriptive, because I want to see what she comes up with, which might be better than the way I would edit it.
Si vous tournez
to the film called The Damned pour Cinéma, c'est à propos de...
He's very intimate and soft, and then he goes outside and takes a photograph in front of the microphone on the grand desk, and little details like that, the grand desk photograph is a fake, and the knowledge that I learned in the room with him when he did it. Those came from the Burroughs, but it's really going back to the theme of being open. I suppose something else I want to talk about is the importance of serendipity in directing, which again is uncomfortable to think, because we like to think we're control freaks, we can control our outcomes, we don't need any chance, but over and over again in my life, serendipity has played a role, and this is an example where the discovery of these diaries, at the last minute in fuse from shooting, completely enriched and transformed our understanding of it, and it's about sometimes not only finding findings, having the chance, but having the freedom in your brain to change your plan and accept that something's arrived that's better than what you had, or more original, and so have this strange sort of combination of being very very passionate in your plan, but being willing to be open to your plan being changed.
Oui, il y a certains éléments.
Amazed by it, of course. How did you choose these three? Including Helena Bonham Carter.
Well, the interesting thing is that at the time that I wanted to cast Colin Firth, there was a lot of negativity amongst the financiers because they felt he wouldn't, he wasn't good at box office, and we had to fight, quite hard to cast Colin Firth, and it shows us the ridiculousness of the business because this was before Single Man, Tom Ford's film, came out, and then sort of, literally 3 months after people were telling me he wouldn't help the film, he wasn't commercial enough. Single Man came out, he was Oscar nominated, everyone was saying, Tom, that's such a brilliant idea. So unfortunately, actors are a bit like stocks in the stock market, and they go up and down in people's perceptions, and most of it is unreal. It's just like the pricing of the stock, whether it's hugely high or too low. I suppose one thing I would say is you've got to sometimes screen out the noise of the business and the hype of the business, and look at the fundamentals of an actor. And actually, Colin had done a lot of romantic comedies, as you know, and maybe that's affected his reputation. But my casting director suggested I looked at something he made when he was 24 years old, and it was a television film about the Falklands War, when he played a soldier who had been in an explosion and had some brain damage, and it was a film about a man recovering from brain damage, which was in fact incredibly similar thematically speech. And that was the performance. Why I cast him was that performance, which was so extraordinary. It's incredibly hard to get a copy of this. You can't find it on the internet. My casting director happens to know it, but it's what I suppose the key thing is always do your own research and not become led by the fashion of the moment, and also you can kind of create your own fashion. Obviously, you create your own fashion in part of that. But yeah, so it was a huge privilege to work with him. Geoffrey Rush was one of them as well, and it was very, I had a very exciting time with those two actors because we had a 3-week rehearsal, and we ended up rewriting a lot of the script in the rehearsal. Because both actors turned out to have extremely ears for dialogue, and that 3 weeks of us stuck in this hotel room rewriting the script was probably my highlight of the whole process, because the men are such rigor about the rewriting process.
Pour le choix de casting,
yeah, they became go back to the collaboration, it became a lot of collaborators, and I've never done this before, but I sent them both my director's cut edits, and both of them had extremely good notes. It must have been one actor did say I'd like a few more notes, which is less helpful. But what was interesting is the actors have a muscle memory of the scene, which is different from the director's memory. There were a couple of times where Geoffrey and Colin had a muscle memory of something they did in the scene, which they thought was more, which we missed, and we went back into the rushes and found these little grace moments or these little notes, and definitely they both helped improve through their knowledge of community.
Oui, en parlant des collaborations, c'était...
We could do a masterclass about this film, but just the last question about it before moving on to Misérables. It got a lot of success. What are the consequences of this success for you? Your work on board, of course.
Well, it's interesting because, as I approach the day of the Oscars, there's such kind of people are so ecstatically sort of happy for you, which is wonderful. But it's slightly as if they sort of say, if you win the Oscar, you're going to be given the key to the secret door. And on the Monday morning afterwards, you can put the key in the door, you can open there on the table with great unmade scripts and then rules. And as the day of the Oscars approached, I began to realise that there was no key, there was no secret door, there were no great unmade scripts. That the difficulty of finding good scripts would be the same on the Monday with an Oscar as on the Friday without an Oscar. And that was the curious thing, that it was a wonderful experience, but I realised it wouldn't change the difficult reality of finding great stories and finding great materials. So I think that I suppose what's interesting is, you know, a few years ago I didn't get to read every script that was around. I now get to read anything I want, and finding those truly great voices and those truly great writers is truly hard. There aren't very many of them. I think that's one of the things I've learned. But mainly I just felt that I should. I felt like I needed to carry on working, so I worried that if I left it too long, I might get paralysed by this idea of making a follow-up film. How could it ever be what Music was? So I thought for my sanity I should just keep it. It's rather Jacobian, the answer doesn't work.
Les Misérables, je vais poser une question rapide, je vous remets dans le contexte. Les Misérables, c'est basé évidemment sur le livre de Victor Hugo, mais sur la comédie musicale qui en avait été faite. Donc la partition a été utilisée pour le film. Et les acteurs, ce qui n'est pas la façon habituelle de faire, étaient chantés en live, si je puis dire, devant la caméra, avec une oreillette et un pianiste qui, sur le plateau, les accompagnait, vraiment pour leur donner juste une notion de justesse. So all this being said, how do you edit this kind of film, if post-scoring, the music scores there?
Well, the interesting thing, I mean, so from the beginning I wanted to do the musical live, but I didn't want to do the singing live. I wanted the musical accompaniment to be live, so that the actors, what was sort of radical about it was I was giving the actors control of the tempo, so they didn't even have a conductor. There was just a pianist who they could hear in their ear, and no one was in their eye line, so they could control the pace of their own singing. So to me it was like a series of soliloquies where if you had an actor doing a soliloquy, obviously he's in control of the pace. But what was technically demanding was that, as you probably know in music, you can't intercut music with different tempos together, so it meant that every time the actor performed a version of the song, it was a one-off, that you probably couldn't intercut it with another version of the song because the tempo might be different. And so I had to shoot it to protect this idea that every song was, I could only use one take of it. And out of that grew this idea of actually the songs holding in single shots, particularly the one with Anne Hathaway, the song Dream the Dream. But it was one of the only times in my life where I've put the camera second in terms of what was most important was achieving the live singing, and for that I needed to shoot it multi-camera and put the cameras in places that allowed me to get every shot I needed in every take, rather than doing lots of different shots in order to protect their rights to it.
Ce que je voulais pour Les Misérables, c'était que la musique en fait soit live et que les comédiens quand ils chantent en fait, et comme quand on fait un monologue, comme quand un comédien fait un monologue, qu'ils aient la responsabilité, qu'ils puissent choisir en fait le rythme à laquelle la chanson est faite, ce qui rend impossible en fait le montage avec différentes prises. Donc pour ce cas-là, en fait, vous avez une oreillette où vous commandez, donc il y avait l'accompagnement. Et c'était, plutôt que d'avoir une caméra pour plusieurs prises, j'avais plusieurs caméras, et c'était ce qui était mon focus principal en fait, c'était vraiment de positionner les caméras pour chaque prise, pour avoir en fait les différents plans dont j'avais besoin, parce qu'on pouvait utiliser en fait qu'une version en fait de la chanson, parce que la deuxième prise en fait sera sur un rythme légèrement différent.
Can you ask any French actors for the Misérables?
No, but I was quite. It would be a slightly strange thing that once you sort of said it's in English, then to have someone with a very strong French accent. Okay, quite logical. I know obviously for this audience the idea of it not being French is a shocking one. Although the only person who insists on doing French French accent was Sacha Baron Cohen. Like the anarchy of doing acts like that, no one else was.
Non, j'ai pas cassé d'acteur français parce que je me suis dit, comme tout le monde parle anglais, si on a un comédien qui a un gros accent français, ça fera bizarre. La seule personne qui voulait avoir, qui a absolument insisté pour faire un accent français, c'est Sacha Baron Cohen. Il a voulu s'astreindre en fait à garder l'accent.
On a très peu de temps devant nous. Est-ce qu'on a le temps pour 2 questions du public? Ouais. Oui, monsieur.
Oui. Bonjour. Je voudrais savoir si, comme avec les comédiens, vous faites parfois venir votre scénariste initial au montage pour avoir la vision du scénariste qui a écrit le premier scénario de votre film.
Very good question. And it's a highly political question. I think it depends. I'm not going to be specific about the films for obvious reasons, but I think it depends on the relationship with the writer. And I think some writers are good at understanding that their script is a blueprint which is going to become something new, and they're good at sitting in the cutting room and being open to the new things become, rather than holding on to the changes and kind of going, but because you can become so preoccupied by the things that have changed that you're not really seeing, that you haven't let go. But there are some writers I work with who are able to let go of the original vision and see the new vision and help you make the new vision better. And those, I love having in the process. I certainly feel I think I've always included writers in the editing, and I've always shown writers the cuts of my films I go, but how intimately involved depends on that. But it's kind of the same process I was talking about as a director, that as a director you have a vision going in, and the editing room you have to kind of let go of some aspects of that vision because it may be slightly different, and try to make what you've actually got in front of you as good as possible.
C'est une très bonne question, c'est une question qui est très polémique. Mais la réponse, c'est que ça dépend en fait de la relation que vous avez avec le scénariste et en fait de la possibilité, leur compréhension en fait du fait que leur scénario est une base en fait du travail, mais que ça ne va pas être la trame et ça ne va pas être le produit en fait qu'ils ont fait. Certains scénaristes comprennent ça, ils vous aident en fait à faire en sorte que le produit que vous créez, le produit qui est fait, et comme je vous ai dit en fait pour le réalisateur, si le film qu'on a dans la tête et le film que vous avez devant la platine de montage est complètement différent. Certains scénaristes en fait le comprennent et d'autres scénaristes en fait ont plus de mal. Et donc forcément, après je ne vais pas vous donner de nom, mais c'est vraiment une question de relation.
Good morning, Vincent Sheikh, I'm an actor. I was wondering, what do you think about the words of Howard Barker, sorry for my French accent, who said that the mission of art is not to enjoy the audience or to give a message, but only to try to exist or to try to give a certain truth, a relative truth. It's a word that you employ in your discourse. Thank you very much for your answer. What do you think about this word?
I think, thank you for the question. I think they're very interesting words. Whether they operate, sadly, we also operate in a world where filmmaking is expensive and people who fund films want to see some of it come back to them. So I think if I sat with a financier and said that I was not interested in working with the audience or entertaining, and this was not important, I might struggle to fund my films. But I suppose that the films that I'm proud of all in the end, they're probably not didactic, or they're probably not driven by a message. They're probably more revealing an emotional truth that I've experienced, and I think possibly why the King's Speech worked very well is that it was an emotional truth that I knew from so much from the inside that resonated with people. So, but you can be emotionally true and have a very boring story, and I'm a great fan of great stories, and I see myself first and foremost as a storyteller, and the story has to hold people's attention and fly, and through that you can arrive at truth.
Donc la question c'était l'opinion par rapport à une citation de Howard Barker, qui est un dramaturge britannique, qui était en fait dit en fait
il dit que la mission de l'art, enfin du théâtre et de l'art en général, ne serait pas de divertir ou de donner un message au public, mais seulement de tenter d'exister au plateau ou devant la caméra, tenter de donner une relative vérité en fait au public.
Et donc, alors c'est difficile d'aller voir les financiers disant alors on se fout éperdument du public. Mais donc, ceci étant dit, j'aime à penser que mes films ne sont pas didactiques, ou en fait c'est pas forcément des messages sur grand écran, mais que c'est le fait de partager en fait une réalité, une expérience émotionnelle en fait. Et donc, pour revenir à l'idée de réalité, de vérité partagée. Et je pense que mais on peut en fait avoir cette réalité, cette vérité émotionnelle en fait sur des grandes histoires. Et c'est pour ça, à mon avis, que le discours d'Arroy a eu le succès qu'il a eu, qui est que c'est justement cette réalité, c'est ce combat ou ces émotions en fait que les gens avec lesquelles les gens sont entrés en empathie et ont compris en fait. Et c'est pour ça, à mon avis, qu'un film en fait peut fonctionner, c'est cette réalité que j'essaye de véhiculer.
Alors c'est très frustrant de ne pas avoir pu s'attarder plus sur les derniers films, mais de faire des dernières questions, je suis désolée. Maybe you can just tell us what you're working on now, since you gave us the honor to be with us now when you're in production.
I started shooting about 6 weeks on a new film called The Danish Girl, starring Eddie Redmayne and Alicia Vikander. Around the time I was doing the King's Speech. It's a very small film, and it's about the very first man who was operated on to become a woman in the 1920s. He was a Danish artist. And it's really a portrait of a marriage going through this profound transformation. And it's a love story because his wife loves him so much that she supports him on this journey, even though she knows she'll lose him as her husband. So it's a story of a very pure, self-sacrificing love. And it's in some ways a return to the theme of the King's Speech, which was partly about this idea of being blocked in your body as a stutterer. And if you're experiencing gender dysphoria, if you're a woman trapped in a man's body, that is maybe the most profound kind of block a human being can experience, and the story of how this block has overcome through the transformative agency of his wife's love is the story.
Dans 6 semaines, je commence le tournage d'un film qui s'appelle L'homme danois, qui parle en fait de la première opération de transformation sexuelle, en fait, du premier homme en fait qui est devenu une femme dans les années 20. Qui est un homme danois, et toujours en fait en venant sur le discours d'Arroy, en fait c'est l'amour en fait de sa femme qui le soutient en fait, et qui le second, même si, et qui l'aime par amour en fait, même si elle sait qu'elle va perdre son mari avec cette opération. Et cette idée en fait qu'on est bloqué à l'intérieur de son corps, en fait, que c'est si comme Bertie en fait avec les bègues, c'est le fait, ce blocage en fait, le fait d'être une femme qui est bloquée dans le corps d'un homme, en fait c'est le plus gros blocage, le plus gros obstacle en fait, que quelqu'un a une douleur en fait, que quelqu'un peut imaginer. Donc c'est l'histoire.
Thank you so much for being with us. Merci à vous.